Hello, and welcome to the Geopolitics Explained podcast. China has had quite a busy end to August and to the start of September. The Chinese hosted the 2025 Summit for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Tianjin. And then a few days after this, we saw China's military parade, which marked the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II in Asia. Every time a major summit comes around that involves China, I see a lot of analysis that downplays the role that these meetings play in the current status of the geopolitical world order. The existence of a multipolar group and the occurrence of these summits is the only sign that we need that the world is set to undergo dramatic change in coming years and decades. Nations aren't incentivized to remain in a scenario in which they are disadvantaged, and for many, that is the world of today. With this idea in mind, today's episode will explore the recent summit in Tianjin, as well as the Chinese military parade and the general status of the multipolar world. Before diving into the details of this summit and some of the key takeaways, I'd like to provide a little bit of background on the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. This group is a Eurasian political, economic, and international security organization. It was founded in June 2001 by 6 original members, those being China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. We've since seen 4 more members join. India and Pakistan joined in June 2017, Iran joined in July 2023, and Belarus joined in July 2024. In its current status, the group is the world's largest regional organisation in terms of geographic scope and population. The group covers 24% of the world's total land area and 42% of the world's population. This year's summit also saw the participation of the following nations: Armenia, Azerbaijan, Cambodia, Egypt, the Maldives, Myanmar, Vietnam, Laos, Indonesia, Mongolia, Nepal, Turkey, Turkmenistan, and Malaysia. Representatives from ASEAN, the CSTO, the Eurasian Economic Union, and the United Nations were also in attendance. One of the biggest moments from this year's summit was President Xi's speech. From this speech, I'll take 2 main quotes that I think set up the rest of the takeaways that I want to establish from this year's summit. Firstly, Xi stated, quote, "Shadows of Cold War mentality and bullying have not dissipated, with new challenges mounting." The second quote that I want to take away is, quote, "Global governance is at a crossroads." Now, this leads nicely into one of the biggest announcements from the summit, which was President Xi's Global Governance Initiative. This is a concept that is based on 5 key characteristics. Firstly, the initiative wants countries to adhere to sovereign equality. They want them to abide by international rule of law. They want them to practice multilateralism. They want to advocate for a people-centered approach, and they want to take real actions. Now, I'll return to this later on because this initiative can also be framed through the general pursuit of a multipolar world. In returning to the summit, India's attendance was also notable, especially with current India-US relations strained by trade issues and US-Pakistan relations. It's this that I will dive into next episode, which should be released on Tuesday. Another key takeaway from this summit was the signing of the Power of Siberia 2 deal between Russia and China. This was seen as quite peculiar at first by many analysts. Many doubted the legitimacy of the Memorandum of Understanding due to a lack of terms that were initially announced. But in the aftermath, some more of these terms were revealed. It was revealed to be a 30-year project, and the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline will flow through Russia and Mongolia before arriving in China. This will boost Russia's energy revenues, and it will strengthen Russian-China energy cooperation. The pipeline is expected to be able to carry 50 billion cubic meters of gas every year. Now, this is nowhere near the 180 billion cubic meters of gas that Russia used to send to Europe every year. The Europeans have recently introduced measures that will see them stop the import of Russian oil and gas by the end of 2027. This Power of Siberia 2 pipeline does make it clear that Russia is seeking to re-divert its energy sources to the east. However, it is worth noting that a memorandum of understanding is a long way from a final investment decision, and this process still has some key steps that it needs to navigate before this becomes a reality. Another interesting takeaway from this summit is something that was overheard on the hot mics when Xi and Putin were talking. Specifically, this was on the topic of organ transplants and immortality. Evidence of this discussion has since been removed from coverage by China's state-owned enterprises. We could dive into individual takeaways from this specific summit, but the biggest takeaway here, in my opinion, is the existence of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and what it stands for, not just this year's summit. For 20 years, this group and the United States have clashed. The United States applied for observer status to the SCO in 2005, but they were rejected. Coming a little closer to the present day, in 2023, the United Nations approved the resolution titled Cooperation between the United Nations and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. 80 nations voted in favour of this resolution, 47 abstained and 2 voted against it. The only 2 who voted against it were the United States and Israel. Since 2005, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization has promoted the idea that it is stuck by its goals. These include multilateral cooperation, equal rights, and mutual respect. These goals are very attractive to nations who feel they currently lack this in the current world order. Of course, many member states of the SCO, including China with its intense cyber operations against other nations, and Russia with its conflict in Ukraine, have directly broken many of these goals. We've even seen SCO members clash directly, including India and China in the Gawan Valley in 2020, and further skirmishes that occurred in 2022 and 2023. We've also seen India and Pakistan clash in Kashmir and Jammu. China and Malaysia have disputes in the South China Sea. The Myanmar war is currently unfolding, and tensions exist between China and Vietnam. None of these issues were mentioned at this year's Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, but the group remains in place, and its members want a better position in the current world order, despite these internal issues. More importantly, they have a long-term proactive approach to this goal, with time and multiple tailwinds on their side. Strategic patience and shared interest are powerful geopolitical forces that the SCO and the nations within it clearly possess. The group, led by China, will continue to push for a larger slice of the world order than it currently possesses. Other institutions, such as BRICS and their expansion, the Belt and Road Initiative, and the Shanghai Gold Exchange, that facilitates trade in alternative currencies, will continue to advocate for this alternative world order. Even with potential hurdles and some member states contradicting the core principles of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, it seems that these contradictions will be accepted if it preserves the coalition's unity as a geopolitical tool against the current world order. For China, this is an opportunity to lead the SCO as a flexible institution of long-term global influence that will shape the future multipolar world. Moving on from the SCO, a few days later, we also saw China undertake another show of strength with their military parade. This parade was to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second Sino-Japanese War and World War II in Asia. The most notable attendees were Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong Un of North Korea. This marked Kim's first visit to China since 2019. It was also the first time that a North Korean leader had been present for a Chinese military parade since Kim Il-sung attended in 1959. Some analysts had suspected that North Korea and China had been distancing relations in recent years. This could have been for a variety of reasons, including North Korea's strategy of Juche, which supports their isolation. Beijing's support of tougher UN sanctions on North Korea that occurred in 2016 and 2017, China's hope for stability in the Korean Peninsula, and active North Korean involvement in the Ukraine conflict. Also, the North Koreans are openly hostile towards the United States, while China fluctuates between competition and conflict. China doesn't want to be seen as an aggressor, whereas the North Koreans happily adopt this stance. Sometimes, this means that China needs to distance itself from this aggressive stance of the North Koreans, while at other times, North Korea gives the United States something else to think about. This could sometimes stand to benefit the Chinese. Outside of Putin and Kim Jong Un, this parade was also attended by leaders from 26 countries, including Vietnam, Malaysia, Iran, Belarus, and Pakistan, among others. Beijing also invited former politicians from Japan, Australia, and Taiwan. This military parade saw the Aerospace Force, the Cyberspace Force, the Information Support Force, and the Joint Logistics Support Force march independently alongside the Chinese Army, Navy, Air Force, and Rocket Force. China also showed off many different weapons, including the YJ hypersonic anti-ship missile, Dongfeng and Julang ICBMs, and Hongqi air defense interceptors. However, some of the biggest developments occurred in military space technology. The HQ-29 missile defense system was described as a satellite hunter. It can intercept missiles and satellites at altitudes of up to 500 kilometers. Also, many other missiles were new unveilings at this military parade. Final notable inclusion was the AJX-002, which is an autonomous underwater vehicle that China unveiled. This parade has highlighted that China has active stakes in a wide range of military realms that are prevalent today and will be even more prevalent in the future. In the aftermath of this parade, Donald Trump sent wishes to the Chinese people for a, quote, great and lasting day of celebration. However, he then posted on Truth Social, quote, give my warmest regards to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong Un as you conspire against the United States of America. Trump clearly sees the rise of a multipolar world as one of aggression against the United States and not one of self-interest. Countries that don't possess the slice of the global world order that they believe they should have will seek to pursue a greater slice. Trump sees this situation as zero-sum. The loss of the United States would be to the gain of those interested in the rise of a multipolar world. With Xi's latest global governance initiative, the Chinese are painting the rise of a multipolar world as a positive sum gain. In such a world, all nations can benefit together from this rise of a multipolar world. That's why when analysts dismiss these summits, such as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, as just noise, I disagree because they highlight how many nations in our world today have an interest in such a positive sum world. The reality for the United States is that declining empires seek to protect their position. This is zero-sum, especially in the position of the United States today, who are seen as a sole global hegemon for the last few decades. Existing empires naturally overstretch, whether financially, geographically, or militarily, and they then have to defend their position as many indicators of their power start to decline. So throughout history, ruling powers have played zero-sum defensive games, while rising powers can paint their rise as positive sum. We can't predict how these two future forces will interact, but what is clear is that the US-China relationship does fluctuate between competition and conflict. This is complicated because it occurs across a range of elements within geopolitics, such as finance, trade, and technology. However, one of the most important takeaways is that the trend in relations between these two superpowers isn't a positive one. And so, this interaction, fluctuating between competition and conflict, will likely remain for years and decades to come. This rise of a multipolar world is seeking to create an architecture that will formulate an alternative world order. And the fact that there is interest from many countries in such a world order highlights what a key trend this will be in coming years and decades. As I discussed earlier, next week I will discuss India's role in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, as well as the current tensions between India and the United States. Is this a situation that is being resolved, or will India and the United States put further distance between themselves? That's all for today. If you enjoyed this episode, why not leave a review on the podcast platform of your choice? I've been Dylan. I'll talk to you next time.